Hearts on fire, strong desire, rages deep within. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies with special guest Tim Davis. This is the podcast where all three of us went and saw a movie at our local Regal Cinema Theater. And now we're going to talk about it in the parking lot, in Matt's Honda Pilot, right after the movie. We're going to discuss such things as, should you see this movie? Should you not see this movie? Should you see it in theaters for sure? Or could you skip for streaming? Should you snack? Are there bathroom breaks involved? We try to get to all that stuff, but we make no promises. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy. And yes, Tim is back with us this week. We love to have him. And we saw a movie. This movie is called Creed 3. It is the
ninth Rocky movie.
Installment in the Rockyverse.
The third installment in the Creed story.
Yes. So yeah, we saw this. It has lots of boxing stuff in it and other stuff like that. And it's got people in it from previous Creed movies. And some famous people are in it. You know, Michael B. Jordan is in it, as you might expect, playing Adonis Creed. Felicia Rashad is in it, as you might expect, playing his mom.
Yep.
Tessa Thompson is in this, playing Adonis Creed's wife. And Jonathan Majors, who we decided recently is famous, is in this.
This is his coming out year.
That's right.
You heard it first from us here.
He plays Adonis Creed's childhood friend, Dame Anderson. Diamond.
Yeah,
Dame.
Damian Anderson, Diamond, Dame Anderson.
Yes. Anyone else we should mention?
I don't think he's... I'm not going to say he's famous. I'm not going to... Or a celebrity. I'm not going to make that argument. But it does make me happy when these movies come out and I see the guy who was in Remember the Titans still having work.
Yes.
Julius from Remember the Titans. He
Harris,
plays little Duke.
Yeah, I believe Wood Harris is his name. He's a good character actor for a long time.
Sometimes I just like to do a little shout out when I see him and I'm like, hey, good for you. I don't know if anyone else from those movies besides the super famous ones are still doing anything.
Right. Okay. There are a bunch of people who are famous in sort of boxing circles.
There's a couple of
there's
actual commentators.
Right.
Stephen A. Smith shows up at one point.
Right, exactly. So we're not going to go through all those.
Yep.
We're not boxing people. We don't know who they are. They're just there.
Only Rocky people.
Right.
Oh, that's what I
That's
have.
right. That's right. So that's who's in it. What's this movie about? Well, Adonis Creed. It opens with him fighting his quote unquote last fight. He's retiring. He's fighting this guy that he's fought before. He's the only guy he's lost
to. From the first movie.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
And
pretty Ricky Connolly.
Yes. Thank you. Conlin,
maybe.
Yeah,
I think
it's
so.
Conlin. Anyway, so that's how the movie starts. He's fighting this last fight. It's his retirement fight. He wins the fight, and he has all the title belts, and he's like, I'm out of boxing now. I'm retiring and gonna have family time and all this, and then shortly after that, he has a gym, and he's supporting this guy for who has taken over for him as heavyweight champion, Chavez, Chavez, and so he has set up a fight between Chavez and Drago Jr., who he fought in the second movie, who is Ivan Drago's son. So he set up this bout, and then in the meantime, this guy, his friend Damien from his youth, comes back into his life. He's been in prison for 18 years, and he's out of prison now. And they have history, and they talk, and they get back acquainted. And he's like, I want to be a fighter again. I was like good when I was younger, but then I went to prison for 20 years, and I want back in the game. And he's
I still
like,
got the goods.
yes, yes. And so through a series of events, he ends up getting a title shot against this guy Chavez because Drago gets hurt and there's no one else to fight him in the whole world of boxing. So they pick someone who has never had a bout in his life, and that is Diamond Dame Anderson. And then he ends up winning that fight unexpectedly and becomes the champion. And then there's a lot of like
Beef.
Yeah, yes,
that
between
surfaces.
him and Adonis that surfaces, and they express their unhappiness with each other, and then eventually, as is typical in a Rocky movie, they decide to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world because why not? Adonis Creed comes out of retirement and they fight, and I won't tell you who wins, but I will tell you they fight.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie.
Fair.
So,
Good rundown.
thank you. So, Todd, what is your gut reaction to Creed 3?
My gut reaction, and I think I have to preface all this by saying that I'm going to be digesting this movie for a while.
Okay.
As an avid fan of Rockies, there will be a lot of me thinking about this movie.
Okay.
But we're all about gut reactions here. So
Yeah.
my gut reaction is that I like this movie. This is probably the most story driven
Yeah.
of a Rocky since the original two, maybe 1 and 2.
That's fair to say.
And I really like that. Like, I think everyone got used to the formula, and I think this movie borrows enough of the formula that it feels like a Rocky Creed movie. But there's also like different elements in this movie that I liked. Like, I like it deals a lot. This movie specifically deals a lot with past trauma and how we handle past trauma and how it can affect us in our present day life, these things that have happened to us in the past and stuff like that. And you can think you've got a hold on something, or you could think you've put something behind you, and it just takes one little thing, a memory, a person from your past, anything like that, to just bring up floods of emotions that can cause huge wrenches in your current day life. And I thought this movie tackled that on a pretty strong way. I thought it's very prevalent. It's very I like one of the big things that I really love what it did is that it's not whereas I think the original Rocky movies were, I'm a man. Men don't talk about this kind of stuff or whatever, like was kind of like a big theme of the original Rocky movies. Don't stop me from being a man and stuff like that. I like how everything's evolved since then. This is more like, at no point is this movie like, I'm a man, I gotta, whatever. This movie's like, and specifically Adonis is like, I don't know how to handle this kind of stuff. Like, you're good with emotions, I'm not. I don't know how to handle this. And, it's a process of him trying to figure out how to handle these emotions. And I really, as a person who has dealt with mental health my entire life and has had problems with my past and stuff like that, I really loved that aspect of this movie. I even feel like it could have been more front and center than it was. But this is still a Rocky franchise movie, so we got to get back to, what we all came for. And I think comparisons that I make between this movie and the past Rocky movies is I feel like this is a much more better fleshed out Rocky 3, where you have this just dominating opponent who comes out of nowhere, not played by Mr. T this time.
Yep.
And just has a chip on his shoulder about life. And as far as Rocky 3 and how it wasn't fleshed out, is that you never really know what is driving Clubber Lang. Like, he just pops on the scene, and he's mean, and he's got a chip on his shoulder, he hates the world, maybe he's been in jail, maybe not. You just don't know much about him. This one, we've got Diamond Dame coming on the scene, and you really understand his point of view. And yes, he's painted at times as the villain in this movie. He just, like, the depths of layers to the characters, I thought were so very prevalent in this movie, more than almost any other Rocky movie, I would say. And I think also the thing that I really love about this movie is that they had the chance, just like any Rocky movie, to bring in, like, a character from the past or a past Rocky thing and, like, help Adonis get past this kind of stuff. But it's the first time I really think I can ever really point out in a Rocky movie where that doesn't happen. Adonis works on himself and kind of is able, through working on himself, get past some of the hurdles. It's not like someone came in and gave him, like, the most inspirational speech you could ever hear or anything like that. It was him working out his fears, his past problems, his hesitations when fighting, like, all that kind of stuff. And I just really dug that level, like, taken from a Rocky franchise movie. The ending fight gets a little artsy at times. I really felt I liked what they were trying to say, as in, this is, like, you know, between these two fighters, these two past friends, these two people who consider each other brothers. And they just do some artsy things, and I was like, okay, I see what you're going for here. I don't know if it necessarily landed with me, but I can definitely see what they were going for. And then, you know, honestly, the acting, I think, is good. Like, I don't really felt like I had any problems with anyone. You know, I think there's a lot of very emotional moments in this movie, and I think Tessa Thompson and Michael B. Jordan did a stellar job of kind of being a part of those real meaty, emotional moments in the movie. Same thing with Jonathan Majors, you know, like, I don't think at any point I had to stop and consider, well, I wonder what his motivation is. Like, they spell it out in the movie, and he conveys it in a way that you're like, all right, I get it. I'm there. I totally get it. So, I really like this movie. I think if you're a Rocky fan, if you've watched the Creed movies, then there's no reason for me to say don't come and see this movie. It's really not even. Little kids probably shouldn't see this movie, but this is a good movie. I really like this movie. I feel like you could see this movie, and even if you didn't watch all the others, you would miss a huge part of it, but you could still walk in and say, okay, that was a movie. I watched it. I had a good time. You could walk out. So, you know, this is probably going to get kind of high marks for me. There are some negative things that like the artsy kind of ending fight. But I thought this was a super strong performance by everyone involved and a strong outing for the Rocky franchise, which could conceivably, it's not going to be its last franchise movie because we already know a Drago movie is coming out. But this is I think it's a nice send-off to the Creed story. So, a satisfying conclusion, I would say, to the Creed story. For me. And that's where I'm going to leave it. I think I definitely prattled on there for a while, but hopefully someone can listen to that and understand what I was going for and say, oh, I'm going to see this movie now. But Tim, let us in. How do you feel about this movie?
Yes, I think we're in pretty much lockstep here. I really enjoyed this movie too, and I think more than I expected to. Not that that's a knock at the franchise at all, but there is a formula to some of these movies, but they've all done them pretty well. And this one did feel a little different, in a good way. And like you said, it was all really driven by the story more than the fights in this movie. The fights were there because they had to be, but they weren't the be-all, end-all. It really was about the journey of the characters on all sides. And like you said, Jonathan Majors wasn't really a villain. He was just the antagonist, and as opposed to a evil bad guy. And that's what made him interesting, is because at first when you first meet him on the screen, you're kind of like, oh, I like him. He seems I can see why they were friends. And then when you explains why they had a falling out and what happened, you're like, oh, I see now why he's got, there's something a little off with him, and this could be really tough for Creed. And that's a good thing, because you want, like, real life stakes make it much more, of a battle, like a true fight. It's not just a physical fight, it's an emotional fight too. And I thought this movie really hammered that home, and stayed with the beats instead of just letting the fight speak for it. It's like, no, we're going to deal with the emotions too, and watch how Creed's handling it in his private life, and how, how it affects his kid or how it affects his wife, and that was really interesting, like you said. And just then, I didn't mind the artistic stuff in the final fight. I actually really liked that touch because that was different. And most of the other Rockies haven't done anything like that. They just let the fight speak for itself. But I thought it was really dramatically shot and really interesting and different. And it kind of like, these two men are so focused on the fight and everything that built up to it, that the world wasn't gone. It was just those two. And I thought he represented that visually, and that was really cool to me. So, again, like you said, all the performances are great. Everybody brings it. Everybody is like, hitting their marks, and it's I agree. High marks for this too. And if this is the end of the Creed story, it's a fine way to go out. Matt?
All right. Well, I agree with you guys pretty much on everything. So I'll say a few things that haven't been said yet. One, I did not like the final fight artistic stuff.
Okay, that's fine.
However, I did like what they did at some other points in different fights that were before that. And I think they did it in the last fight too, where they would, if there was a big important blow landed, they kind of freeze framed it and showed the power behind it, and like muscle and skin like rippling away from a punch, and they kind of colored
made you
it.
Feel it.
Yeah. And
I would say
did
this
like
is
that.
the first Rocky movie that makes you feel like boxing is a chess game, which it really is.
Yeah.
They really captured that aspect of boxing
Right.
in a really good way, I feel.
Yeah. And that's another thing I was going to say, is that I really liked I thought that all of the fighting looked realistic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did they pump up the sound effects a little bit? Of course they
Sure.
do. That's part and parcel for these movies. However, when you compare it to some of the earlier Rocky films, where like you could see the guys like whiffing on purpose,
Right.
and the sound effects aren't there to like fill it in.
Or the sound effect would miss you this whoosh, like it's just a huge, like it's like, whoa, all right.
Right. The fighting in this movie was very realistic. At no point was I like, well, Michael B. Jordan isn't a fighter, is he? Ha ha. Or Jonathan Majors can't really swing.
Yeah, you believe everything.
They look the part. Everyone who boxes in this film looks the part and looks like they're landing blows.
Yeah. I think this movie too, more than any other movie, because this movie shows the fact that there's a lot more like light jabbing and testing each other out.
Yes.
Like,
That's a good way
opposed
of
to
putting
any
it.
other movies where a lot of them, until we got to the Creed movies, a lot of them were just like get in the ring and duke it out. This one, I think we've seen a little bit of that in the previous Creed movies, but this one for sure had a lot of like, showing the fact that in actual boxing fights, there's a lot of testing each other out, trying to
Waiting for
figure
the
out their
moment.
pattern.
Yeah.
Like this was definitely much more
Cerebral is the word.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Some other things that I really liked, you guys touched on kind of the emotion, especially you, Todd, with Michael B. Jordan trying to figure out how to feel his feelings. I would have liked to see him go to therapy and skip his last fight, but that's a bit unrealistic for this style of movie.
Yeah, I was saying we gotta remember why we're here.
I think that was his therapy, unfortunately. Yes.
Yes.
If it was, I'm not going to fight anymore, I'm going to therapy, and then it was like the end of the movie, I don't think many people would come see this movie.
Right. Perhaps not. But I wished for his growth as a man, and he did grow as a man. And so that's good. The other thing that I really liked is Adonis and what's his wife's character name? Bianca. Their daughter is deaf. And they stay true to that in this movie, and there's a lot of sign language and her signing, and I thought that was a great, really inclusive thing for them to do, and to stick with that and maintain that part of the story. I was really pleased with it, and pleased with how, like, all the characters in her family signed to her.
Right.
And, Adonis's character, Bianca's character, they all signed. Even
The mom.
even the mom knew some sign language. So, or a lot, probably.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I also like that we saw, we didn't. This is the first movie we didn't get Rocky in at all. But I did like that all of the people from the Creed family were represented.
Yeah.
And they reprised their roles and filled their roles, and that's always nice, especially with a huge universe of films at this point. It's nice to see that kind of continuity, even if you don't get the man himself. The other thing that I thought about 3/4 of the way through is like, man, I'm really into this story. I'm really engaged.
Yeah.
Like I actively thought that. I was like, oh man, I'm totally sucked in here. This is awesome. So it's always really good. I really did like this movie.
There was not much sighing to be had for
There
me.
was not. There was not. At least not once the movie started. Maybe before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a great movie, and aside from like little kids, it's a little bit. There's a lot of sports violence in this movie.
Sports violence. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Adult themes, I would say. Too.
Yeah, that's true. There are some of those. But yeah, aside from that, I think sure, go see this movie. I think it's certainly worthy if you've watched the other ones to continue your journey with this one. But I think it's a good movie about a boxer. Even if you just watch this one and not the other ones.
Sure, yeah. And I'm really glad you brought up the daughter and the deafness and all that kind of stuff and the signing. Like, I really appreciated that because it would have been so easy for them to just like put an implant in her ear and just call it a day and
right.
That's it. But they really did go the extra mile for more inclusion in this movie.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. And I especially thought the scene where Dame comes over for dinner.
Yes.
And they're introducing him to Amara and they are teaching him what to sign as like saying hello and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I just thought that's the little details is what makes phenomenal movies to me like that. Yep. Like little details like that go so long in immersing you into the movie experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
the last thing I liked, and I'll leave it there, is that we at least got a little Rocky fanfare.
Yeah.
Right at the
climactic moment.
Yes.
Yeah, there were a couple
That was cool.
Yeah, there were a couple they definitely dropped the Creed theme plenty of times in the movie.
Yeah,
but we did do the actual callback, which was nice. I mean, really, who doesn't want to hear that stuff?
Music is just...
So, getting down to the nitty gritty here, how many Golden Gloves would you give this movie? 0 being the worst because then you are not a Golden Glove winner and you are in fact a Golden Glove loser, and no one likes that. 5 being the best because then you've won the Golden Gloves tournament 5 times. I don't even know if that's possible, but here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
prodigy.
Matt,
well,
start us off.
Yes, I will, and I will say that my answer is this is a double sneeze movie.
Yeah,
and we'll go from there. I'm gonna give this a nice higher rating of 3.5 Golden Gloves. 3.5 on our scale out of 5, and go see it. It's good. You can see it in theaters. We saw it on a nice big screen tonight. It was fun. I thought I was even kind of happy to hear some comments from the crowd during the movie.
Yeah.
Some ooh when somebody got
Yeah.
slammed in the ring, and
So that was me.
yeah, I didn't hear it from you. I heard it from
yeah.
to my
People
right.
I definitely reacted. Ooh.
Yeah. So yeah, 3.5 for me.
Grand. Tim?
That's funny. Again, talking about lockstep. That's exactly where my head was at, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I am also at a 3.5.
Okay.
Nice. I will, like I said, probably for the next couple of days be mulling over this movie and stuff like that.
What's your gut number?
And honestly, one of the things I sincerely love about this movie, we can't really discuss because it's the ending, but but those things, all the good stuff that we said, I'm gonna be a little bit higher, and the first number that jumped out at me was 4.
Well,
So,
yeah, fine.
that could change over the next
think
couple
that's a
weeks
problem
as
at all.
I mull it over and dissect it and think about it. But gut reaction, I think this is a great send off to the Creed story.
Yeah.
I think everything comes that needs to full circle, and it's the first Creed movie where we truly get Creed's story.
Yes.
Like the other movies are just the understanding of, wow, he was kind of like a juvenile delinquent, then his mom picked him up, and then everything was golden from there. Now we see that's not really the case, and there was a lot of stuff that went down. And it was just good to really
Flesh him out.
flush it all out.
Yeah.
So,
I will say, that, yeah, like I said, not going into spoilers, but the final shot is really powerful, I thought.
Yeah. Agree. All right. Well, any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think this is the first movie in a while that we've all had been like solid.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely some of our higher score.
Yeah. So,
Deservedly so.
great. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies with Tim Davis on board.
Mm-hmm.
And we reviewed Creed 3 tonight, and we gave it an average rating of 3 2/3 Golden Gloves out of 5, which is an excellent rating for us, especially collectively when we're all that high. I think the movie is in good standing, and we all think you should see it. So do that. Thank you all for listening and subscribing if you do. If you're listening on Apple Music podcast service, you can rate our podcast. So do that.
Yeah.
Rate us a 5. How about that?
5 golden
5
gloves.
Yeah.
golden apples out of
There.
5.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you're listening on another service and you can rate us there too. But anyway. So that's that, and we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da
da da da.
da da da.